Hey everyone, welcome back to Sound Strategies. I'm your host Robert, and today I'm going to be answering another viewer request email. This one comes from Quake from Edmonton, Alberta, who asks, at the moment I'm practicing singing and playing, so when I record clips for the Instagram or YouTube, I'm finding sibilance or high accentuation of the ends of words to be a factor when editing in my DAW. I'm reading up and experimenting on a bit of de-essing as well as audio gating, so perhaps these are some things that you can cover in the future if you like, Quake. Well, Quake, I'd definitely like to talk about that stuff. Vocal sibilance is a real problem because we want our vocals to sound very forward and bright, but sometimes they can sound very harsh and sibilant. So I'm going to show you a couple strategies that can help counteract that effect. So here in Pro Tools, I've got a mix that I was working on. This is by a band that I used to play with called Prairie Revival. The song is called Daydreamer, and I've isolated the vocal track here, unedited. And I'm going to play it back as it is right now, and then we're going to talk about some techniques that can help it fit in with the mix a little bit better.
Bad guys getting out of the mud, yes. All the pretty ladies screaming, help us.
Okay, so you can hear in this second phrase that the S's really pop out.
All the pretty ladies screaming, help.
Screaming. That note right there, the S sound, is the loudest part of the phrase. So one of the first tools that we can use is, as you mentioned, Quake, a de-esser. Now a de-esser is a single band compressor that reacts to high frequencies. So I've got the stock de-esser. Oh, this was one by Waves. And usually that sibilant vocal sound lives around 5 to 7K depending on the vocalist. So I'm going to go up to almost 7K, and I'm going to bring down the threshold so that it's only reacting to those S sounds.
All the pretty ladies screaming, help us. All the pretty ladies screaming, help us.
Cool. So you can see how that really squashes down on the S sounds, but it leaves the rest of the vocal pretty much unaffected. So that's going to help us remove some of those S sounds right from the start. One of the next things that we can do is add a little bit of subtractive EQ. So I'm going to grab the stock EQ plugin in Pro Tools, and we want a bright vocal, but we don't want it to sound sibilant. So if we boost the high frequencies, we're going to get more of that sibilance, and we're going to get a little bit of extra noise as well. So one way that you can get this is to use what's known as kind of the Yin-Yang Effect. So if we want more high frequencies, we can remove lower frequencies, and that's going to focus our ears' attention more on the high frequencies. So the first thing I'm going to do is add in a high-pass filter, and I'm just going to take it up to about 100 hertz or so. And that's going to clean up a bit of that rumble and mud. This is pretty standard procedure.
All the pretty ladies screaming, help us. All the pretty ladies screaming, help us.
So it's very subtle. He's not really singing down there. There's not a lot of information, but it's going to help clean it up and take out a little bit of that mud. So I've soloed the vocal for the remainder of this demonstration so that we can get a better listen to this vocal. Another area that can be kind of a problem and sound unpleasant is around 400, 500 hertz. And this can sound quite boxy and muddy. So I'm going to boost so that you can hear what it is that we're cutting.
All the pretty ladies screaming, help us. All the pretty ladies screaming, help us. All the pretty ladies screaming, help us.
Yeah, so that's very boxy sounding and a little bit resonant. So I'm going to tighten the Q up a little bit and then just cut out a little bit of that. I'm kind of about 3 dB out of there.
All the pretty ladies screaming, help us. All the pretty ladies screaming, help us. All the pretty ladies.
So now we've focused the attention more on the high frequencies, the intelligibility of speech, and the brightness. But there's also one other area that I notice is very present in this vocalist, and that's around 2 to 4K. He has kind of a very nasally sound. So I'm going to boost up there and see what I can cut out.
All the pretty ladies screaming, help us. All the pretty ladies screaming, help us.
Yeah, so around 1.9, almost 2K. There's a bit of a build up there. So again, I'm just going to narrow the Q a little bit and cut a bit out of that. Not too much, because that's a really important area for the intelligibility of speech. So I don't want to make his voice too muffled.
All the pretty ladies screaming, help us. All the pretty ladies screaming, help us.
Okay, great. So we've de-essed the sibilant frequencies. We've cut out a little bit of lower frequencies to accentuate the higher frequencies. And the next thing we can do is add in some compression. I really like using an LA2A. It's a very simple interface. There's only 2 knobs on it, and it sounds great on vocals. It's a classic broadcasting compressor. And one of the things that's unique about it is you can't change the attack and release times. They're set. I looked on the UA website, and it says that it has a attack time of 10 microseconds, which I think is a little fast. I thought that opto compressors were thought to be slower, but this one has a pretty fast attack time, actually. What's interesting about it is its release time. For the first 50%, it takes 60 milliseconds to release. And then for the second half, it can take up to 5 seconds for it to go back to 0, depending on the amount of compression. So you can use those settings, a faster attack time and a slower release time to mimic this type of compression. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to bring down the gain a little bit to make sure that it's matched, and then just turn up the peak reduction. We'll have a listen.
All the pretty ladies screaming, help us. All the pretty ladies screaming, help us.
Great. So I always want to make sure that my compression, the input and output volume are matched, so that I'm not just adding gain with the compression and fooling myself into thinking that I'm making it sound better. So now that we've added some compression, we've taken out the high frequencies, and then we've compressed it further to make it a little bit more even. There's one more trick that I want to show you. It still sounds a little bit muffly, and we want to bring back some of that air and that life. So there's a plugin that I really like to use called TDR Nova, and this is a free plugin. I'll include a link in the description below for you to download it. And what I like about this is that it actually lets you boost frequencies above 20 kilohertz. And you may be wondering, why would we want to do that? We can't, as humans, we can't hear above 20 kilohertz. But what this allows us to do is, if we use a shelf and a very, very low Q, we can boost well above 20 kilohertz, and you can see there that this is extending down into the range that we can hear, and it's a very, very subtle slope, so it's not going to be as noticeable as if we just shelved it at 16 kilohertz or something like that. So I'm gonna drag this in, and we're gonna see what it does.
All the pretty ladies screaming, help us. All the pretty ladies screaming, help us. All the pretty ladies screaming, help us.
Let's listen to it back in with the track now.
All the pretty ladies screaming, help us. Stand up, are you ready for this? Sometimes even ends in a kiss. Oh.
Awesome. So we've de-essed the vocal, we've added some subtractive EQ, then we compressed it, and then we added a slight shelf at about, about 17K, gradually coming down into the vocal presence range. So now let's compare the vocal before and after all this processing.
Bad guys getting out of the bus. All the pretty ladies screaming, help us. Stand up, are you ready for this? Sometimes even ends in a kiss. Oh, today, a boy was found with his hands in the air and his head in the clouds, daydreamer.
So using these techniques together reduced the harsh sibilant nature of the recording while still maintaining a bright forward vocal. Now before I did all this, I made sure to apply fades in between each one of the phrases. This is important for controlling the intensity of breaths and removing potential noise from in between the phrases. So I hope this video gave you some ideas, Quake. Thank you so much for the question. And if you have a question that you'd like answered on the show, please leave a comment below or contact me directly at robert@learnaudioengineering.com. Thanks for watching, and keep making great music.
Oh, tell me